Hello and welcome to Valley Forge Log 8. This one's going to be a pretty big one as it's come to my attention that I haven't really talked about what the game is about at a high level. So I'm going to do that first and then cover what's new in the last couple of months. If you're just interested in what's new, then I'll try to put up a timestamp. So what is Valley Forge? Valley Forge is a cruise simulator. If you're familiar with Barotrauma, Jump Space, or Void Crew, that's a pretty good starting point of what it's about. You and your fellow players are crewing an enormous landship called the Valley Forge, and the game is set upon a once successfully colonized world where an interloping second sun has suddenly joined this planetary system and caused a catastrophic global apocalypse which has decimated almost all life and covered the planet with raging storms of sand and rock. You and your crew set about using the landship's unique shielding to travel between relative safe zones to try to contact survivors, find ruins, and work to repair an orbital capable rocket to escape the planet. This doesn't go to plan, but works towards the true endgame, which is a bit of a secret at the moment. Working against you are two factions. One are the planet's defense drone network, which, acting on its final orders, attempts to suppress any dangers to humanity. Unfortunately, as a crew of an unregistered military asset, that means you. The drone forces will engage you at range and are responsive to electromagnetic threats. If you can manage your sensor profile, they might not even see you. And since the start of the apocalypse, a new type of fauna has also emerged to make things harder on those left alive. These organic beings range in size, terrors the size of your landship to invasive smaller creatures that will attempt to board the Valley Forge and mess things up inside. They're responsive to other stimulus, so stealth and decoy for them will be handled quite differently to the military drones. To achieve your ends, you'll have a massive portable base. It has a number of modular systems and several built-in ones that can be upgraded over time. Guns and missiles for offense, radar, LiDAR, and probably other sensors. Construction and collection modules to maintain the ship's operation. A reactor and huge electrical engines to drive it forward. 3-meter tall mechs to take care of medium level excursions. Medical, research, operations, armory, crew, captain's quarters. There'll be a lot to do aboard the ship. Okay, let's have a look at what has changed since February. First up, we've updated to Godot 4.6.2, and I'll keep doing that as long as they don't deprecate any functions that I'm using. Some new concepts that have been added. Medicine and metabolism. Health nodes can now have medical effects attached to them. These can be healing, damaging, or perhaps buffs, depending on what comes up in the future. The only one that's implemented at the moment is healing, and this works in two stages. There's a medical resource payload which has medical effects attached to it, and its job is simply to apply each effect to the target node as appropriate for its rules. Do the effects stack? Do the effects only affect a specific limb? And other such rules. Each effect contains its own code to apply their effects to the health node. Each time the health node does a tick of medical metabolism, it just says activate to each effect, and then the effect will handle the rest. So I don't have to plan out all of the contents now. I can attach them as they're designed in the future. The next concept is stacking, combining, and splitting. Previously, only magazines could have a count, which turned out to be a problem when I wanted to start stacking medical items or manufactured components. So now I've created a stack resource in Godot that can handle either. If the resource is not attached to an item, it can't be split or stack. So a gun or a tool, you just don't add the stack component. But when you have a magazine or a box of revolver ammunition, you can add that stacking component. And that has a couple of switches attached, whether it can be split into a new pile. So a box of revolver ammo can be easily split, but a rifle magazine can't be split because you need to have a new box to put it into, but they can be balanced between them, so all the ammo can be placed from one into another. It also makes sure that you don't put too many into places that might have restricted numbers, like the revolver, which can only have 6 shots. Putting your 20 box of revolver shots into it will only put in 6. Game constants is a new way that I look after loading resources. Previously, each class and each specific item type would have its own preload conditions, which was pretty inefficient, and it meant if I had to make any changes, I have to go through a number of places. Now all the files are loaded from a single location and are loaded by UID. And the last new concept is capacitors, which at the moment is available to any handheld. When it's attached to a handheld, it now has a place to keep some electrical charge and a strength value of the charge. Previously, the battery would feed straight through into the drill, like a weapon magazine, but now that charge can be taken from a battery or from another source, like a mech reactor, or directly from the Valley Forge, a charging station, which will be implemented at some stage, and get that ready juice for when you want to just pull the trigger on the weapon or tool. Okay, new player stuff. You can now die when you reach 0 health. Your character falls over. It's not an animation, it just rotates your character 90 degrees and stops the running animation. And that puts you into a new spectator camera, which has an orbit mode. It will orbit around the thing that you have selected. At the moment, there's no way to switch between what you're orbiting, it'll just orbit your last body. And it gives you a respawn button to get into a new character who will be spawned in the new medical beds, which I'll talk about in a little while. When you die, the inventory now has a drop all function, which ejects all of your contents. The player spawner automatically detects whether it's a child of a station, and if it is, when you spawn, you'll be sitting in the station instead of standing and able to run around, which is again useful for the medical station. I had a bit of fun with the player death where each time you died, it would rotate you a further 90 degrees. New items. There is a handheld drill, which is useful for extracting raw resources, but is also quite capable in melee combat. Also, as a consequence, the resource nodes now are extremely resistant to damage from non-extraction tools. The battery, which is still a type of weapon magazine, its projectile is an electrical type with a strength, which is used by the capacitor to determine a sort of multiplier. So a standard battery will have 10 strength, for instance, where you might have an upgraded battery which might have 15, which increases the output of the drill. We have the revolver, which can't fit a full stack of ammo at once. When you go into the inventory mode, it automatically pops out the cylinder for you to load shells into. I haven't quite finished the empty shell management. They don't get ejected yet. They'll just keep adding up. And I also have a bug with the single-handed weapon aiming. It's going off to the right, but I'm not planning on fixing that until I start working on the player's inverse kinematics. All right. The revolver ammo box has some visible shells, which was my first work into making visible ammo counts. As you can also see on the battery, it has a visible count in the form of lights which turn on and off. So they're two different ways of having a displayed ammo count. And I do that by having visible full and visible empty shells in the counters for weapon magazines. The last new item doesn't have a model yet, but is the health stim. You can use it on yourself by pressing and holding right click for a second, or by pointing it at another player and holding down for a second while you're within range. That'll deploy the payload, which is I think 10 seconds of 5 healing every half a second. Landship stuff. The landship now has bumper sensors. They are placed at strategic places around the ship, which means you should not be able to run into things anymore. There's 3 on each side around the upper edge, and then there's 2 on the front and back, which are lower down. Each of these poles infrequently, but as you get closer, they'll pole more and more quickly. To make sure that they properly catch bumping into things. They also send out signals, which can be interpreted by one of the operations or driver's multifunction devices to show your proximity. I've got a viewport set up for that, but I haven't actually created the monitor to display that to you yet in-game. Here we have the medbay station. It is a cryopod, which handles both healing and respawning for now. Just a static model, but I plan on having it tilt. I lay back while there's someone inside and stand up straight while it's empty. It uses a new medical resource payload system to heal. It keeps deploying a single dose of quite strong health. I think in the future I'm going to split it up and have a medical bed where healing can happen, and these cryopods will be just for spawning characters, and maybe for when players want to log out, they can go into the bed and sign out and not have their their body ragdoll or whatever. I did some work on their constructor and deconstructor. They weren't playing nice with the revamp of the game spawner that I did at some point recently, which I hadn't noticed, and they simply weren't producing the items after they completed. I took this as a good time to do the game constants work, and now the spawning works quite well. I've also changed the way the constructor has a list of what you can actually make. Instead of having a JSON with hand-typed statistics and requirements and name and everything, it's all done using resource cards through the properties in Godot. In the future, I'm going to automate it and just have it automatically collect all of the resource cards from particular folders, which I think will help deploy that properly and also make modding more viable. In the world, I've modeled up several large rocks to use as terrain. Static objects now use a worker to create missing colliders if they have not been included. I removed all the placeholder rocks that I'd taken from online sources. I had implemented a collider deform for the ground meshes, but there is a bug where once all the rigid items in the world had settled and you make a change to the large 1024 mesh that makes up the ground, it had to stop for a quarter of a second to recalculate everything. And that was causing an unacceptable pause. So that's disabled for the time being, but I'm going to go back and chunk up the collider as well. And that's it for today. Thanks for stopping by.